Thank you, and thanks everyone for coming. This opening slide here is really a question for you all. I've had a lot of experience in managing people, working for people, as I know you all have. And if I were to ask you who was the best boss that you ever had or currently have, I'm guessing you already know that answer. And I'm not 5 seconds into this presentation. You also know the answer to the flip side of that coin. Who was the worst boss you ever had and why? So I want you to think about that as you go through these slides and listen to what I have to say. And I always start at the beginning because that's a very good place to start. This quote from Goethe, "Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it." Boldness has genius, magic, and power in it. I came across that quote in my very first job, and I wrote it on the back of my very first business card, and it's been in my wallet for 42 years. I'm not dating myself. I'm not that old, but I just wanted to underscore that these kinds of quotes, at least for me, actually resonated and meant something and continue to mean something. So, I'm going to share with you the answer to that question for myself, the best boss I ever had. And I actually worked for him twice. He listened, and that was the most important thing. He listened, he gave me space, I was able to share my opinion, my thought, my point of view, and actually I could take the concept of boldness to a whole new level with him, and he would always listen. He questioned me. We discussed it, we drew conclusions, and he had a wicked sense of humor, which I always loved about him because I think humor in the workplace and in life is so important. And it's actually part of the magic in the magic, boldness, and power. So his wicked sense of humor came out in a really interesting way. Rather than just say, "No, get out of my office because what you just said didn't make any sense to me," he simply said, "That's crazy talk. That's just simply crazy talk." I knew exactly what he meant. He meant that it's crazy talk now. It might be crazy talk forever, but at this moment in time, it's crazy talk. So we'll revisit this discussion later on. And he became, and still is today, a very valued mentor of mine. So I'll ask you that question again and ask you to think about it over the next few minutes. So this quote at the bottom of this slide by Captain Kirk of the Starship Enterprise, television show Star Trek, and I don't know, 10 movies, maybe 11 movies subsequent to the TV show. At the beginning of every one of those TV shows, they said and stated that our mission was to boldly go where no man has gone before. So the concept of boldness for me has always been sort of a touchstone, and I love that concept, and I've tried to engage in being bold and looking forward as much as possible. So I've got a long history in business. I've held the C-suite positions across the board: Chief Rev Officer, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer, also the Chief Marketing Officer. I've been inducted, as you heard, into 3 now Halls of Fame. And I really am all about growth. In every role I've played in business, I've looked forward and tried to figure out how best to grow this company in ways that maybe it hadn't been grown before, or in areas that are new markets, opening new geographies, opening new markets vertically and horizontally. So I've been blessed with a great career, and there are a whole bunch of places that I've been and companies I've worked for, but there are a couple that really stand out, and I've got a few stories about it. I was, for 5.5 years, the head of global sponsorship for Universal Studios theme parks. And we packaged sponsorship there, but what we did was when I walked in the door, there were 32 sponsors. And that was way too many because we couldn't service all those sponsors. So the bold move was to cut the number of sponsors in half and double the revenue, which we effectively did. And one of the ways we did it was by really attacking the creative platforms that Universal Studios had to offer. Because every single sponsor that bought into Universal Studios had access to this massive intellectual property rights, icons, characters in the whole Universal Studios library that went all the way back to the 1920s. Now, in this particular instance, we did a sponsorship deal with American Tourister Luggage. Made sense. 3 theme parks across the world, 17 to 20 million people coming to those theme parks each and every year. Most traveled there, so they took luggage. So American Tourister saw this as a perfect fit. We signed the sponsorship deal. They had access to all this creative content, but then they came to us and said, we really don't know what to do. Now that we're a sponsor, we love it, but help us understand how best to take what you've offered us and that we have the rights to and leverage it across all of our communicating platforms. So we sat down with them and our creative team, and we went through the library of Universal assets. Everybody knows who that is, right? I don't know how many movies he's done, but it's more than the first one. So what we came up with was King Kong could actually take the Universal Studios large iconography and bring it right down to the traveling vacationer that came to our theme parks with their luggage. American Tourister just introduced their luggage line that was hard case, and in their words, they believed indestructible. It could stand up to baggage handlers, little kids, not so little kids. Everyone who touched that piece of luggage, whatever they did with it, it was going to withstand the test of time, and it was super durable. So we put King Kong next to the luggage, and Universal and American Tourister laid out this whole advertising campaign for American Tourister around King Kong, banging around the luggage, throwing the luggage over the fence, carrying the luggage, whacking people with it. It was really cool, and it brought to life the message that American Tourister was telling their consumer. This luggage line is indestructible. It can stand up to King Kong. So when I was the boss, and I've been the boss quite a few times, I talked about that boldness idea and the fact that having a vision is so important, whether it was at Universal Studios or whether it was in the world of triathlon. The vision and being able to connect dots and see through obstacles that perhaps others didn't see through, or connect dots in more interesting ways, we called it seeing around corners, is a really important thing and has sort of been a hallmark of what I've tried to bring in a leadership role to everybody that has worked with me or that I've hired. These concepts are pretty straightforward and very simple, but they're worth stating again. Teamwork is everything. You lead, you follow, or you get out of the way. I don't know who famously said that, but it's absolutely true. You align personnel with vision, mission, and strategy, and then you empower each individual person to actually do their job. And that has worked for me as an employee working for folks. It's also worked for me as the leader in having people work for me. So I want to sort of spend a little bit of time on Meg Whitman here. She made a really cool quote. It says, most of us can't even begin to imagine. So if you take a step back and allow your imagination to run away with you a little bit, and you realize that Meg Whitman was the CEO of Hewlett-Packard, HP back in the day, that she ran for governor of the state of California, unsuccessfully. She was also the founding CEO of eBay. And those were all sort of breakthrough things. She's now the CEO of Quibi. Show of hands, anybody know what Quibi is? 3. Quibi is a brainchild of Jeffrey Katzenberg. He first met Meg Whitman at Disney when they worked together there in the early 80s. Jeffrey Katzenberg is one of the sort of more brilliant guys in Hollywood. He's a dreamer, and he dreams big. He was the guy who was the animation king at Disney. He left Disney. He worked with Pixar. He helped form DreamWorks with Spielberg and Geffen. Jeffrey Katzenberg is a legend, but he's the dreamer. He doesn't get stuff done per se. He directs traffic, if you will. Meg Whitman had this combination of the early entertainment experience as well as the technology experience from Northern California. So Quibi, which will launch in April of next year, has already raised $1 billion plus in investment capital, 1 billion. And the investors are the likes of Disney, NBC, Time Warner, Viacom, Sony, and Alibaba. And those are the headliners. There are a whole lot of others. The other interesting thing, and I just learned this week, and I'll tell you what Quibi is in a second, but they have already sold out their 2020 advertising platform against all of the content they will distribute, $150 million in advertising commitments, and they're 6 months from launch. So that's a really big idea. That's a bold idea. So Quibi, Q-U-I-B-I, is short form for quick bite. What Quibi will do is it will take long-form content, and they have no library, they have no content today. They're taking that $1 billion and they're financing the major studios to make movies for them. And they're going to make movies in episodic bites, 5 to 8 minutes per chapter. And their whole platform is all around this. So you've all watched video on this. You turn it portrait, you turn it landscape, it doesn't catch up, it's weird, it's got bizarre frames. They're going to make that seamless on this device. It's going to be sound right, it's going to be video right, and it's going to be episodic, and it's going to be must-see TV, quote unquote, on your phone. It's an entirely mobile platform. Why 5 to 8 minute bites? Because they believe that their audience over the course of the day part, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., has breaks in the day. And they have enough time to consume a 6-minute frame or an 8-minute frame or a 10-minute frame and get the entire chapter right there, put it back in their wallet or put it back in their pocket or put it back in their purse. Off they go, they're satisfied for the day. And the long view of Quibi is that once they get a subscriber base that is scaling and scalable, that they will layer in news, layer in sports, and they will become the new content platform across all of the primary news points that folks want. Weather, news, sports, entertainment. It's really kind of a way cool thing, and I encourage you to sort of do your own homework on it. As far as leadership style, it's pretty simple. People person. Whether you're in an office or whether you're working remotely or virtually, which many folks do today, walking around, getting on the phone, hearing a voice, seeing a face, asking if you can help that individual or group is what leadership is about. It's really all about them, not you as the leader. Your job as the leader is to lead, have the vision, make the mission, employ and deploy the strategy and get all of your folks aligned with that, and that's when the boat really starts to go. So the one thing I want to, there's two things actually on here. Intellect versus intuition. You know, our intellect, what we learn, right? The 5 senses. We see it, we hear it, we taste it, we smell it, we touch it. And from the time we're born, those 5 senses sort of envelop everything we learn, everything we know, and how we respond to circumstances, to stimulus, to life in general. One of the things everybody has, but it's really not leveraged or thought of as a viable part of how to learn, is the 6th sense, the intuitive sense. You hear it called gut instinct. I went with my gut. I just thought that was the right thing to do. Well, where did that come from? It comes from that 6th sense, and it comes from spending a little bit of time with yourself, listening to yourself, and when you bolt together intellect and intuition and layer that 6th sense in, you're unstoppable. And I truly believe that. And Carly Fiorina, another HP CEO, who also ran for office in California and didn't make it, made this great comment. I think leadership comes in small acts, not just bold strokes. So you need to actually walk the talk, show up every day, but then embrace that team because they are the future. So people have power. I've talked a little bit about how people interact with each other, how people interact with part of the team. Everybody here, including me, is a cadet. We're all cadets. And cadet is an acronym for 5 words that we're all blessed with at birth, that we all go through our entire lives with, and it's how each individual views those 5 parts that sort of determines how they approach life every single day. So the 5 are character, which is most often defined as what you do when nobody's looking. Attitude, I can't teach anybody how to have a good attitude. You wake up in the morning and you either are ready to go or you aren't. And you are in control of that. You're also in control of the drive and energy that you have. It may be that you suffer from a low energy illness or ailment. There's ways to navigate around that. But the real key to this whole slide is talent. Every single one of us has talent. God gave us that talent. We have it. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to grow it? How are you going to leverage it? Sometimes you don't see it that clearly yourself, but others around you do. And that's why mentorship and leadership and being a part of a team is so important. So this is a great quote from a former football coach who's written a book called The $1 Trillion Coach. Believe in people more than they believe in themselves and push them to be more courageous. So that's a hallmark of leadership for me. I mean, everybody in the room has something to say, something to do, but more importantly, something to give to that organization, that team, that mission, that vision. And if you as a leader or as working for someone who is a leader can extract that out of that room and take that back to your desk, back to your phone, back to your laptop, back to your wherever, you're going to contribute in ways that otherwise would not be possible. So do the simple things. It's not rocket science, but it takes discipline. So you do the obvious, the first things first, you prioritize deadlines. John Wooden, I went to UCLA when John Wooden was still coaching there, and one of his hallmarks was be on time when time's important, period. You don't miss the deadlines. And eat frogs. I mean, when I was preparing this presentation, I've heard this several times, and eat frogs, eat frogs, eat frogs. Why would I ever eat a frog? Well, you wouldn't. That's the point. You would never think about eating a frog. There's a book out that's called The Hard Things, about hard things. So what eating frogs is, every day you have something that you really don't want to do. In fact, you actually hate doing it. But it's a necessary thing you have to do. So bite the bullet, eat the frog, do the hard thing, and then the other parts of the cadet in you will fire on all cylinders. Great quote from Warren Buffett, great quote. I don't want to jump over a 7-foot bar. I want to find a whole bunch of 1-footers to step over. One after the other after the other. Do the simple things and do the obvious, and you'll be amazed at where the path ends. So we're back to that question I asked at the very beginning, and this is actually a potential homework assignment for you. So as you look through this, you already know who the best boss you ever had was. But now the work begins. Why? Why was that person the best boss you ever had? What did you learn? What attributes rose to the surface for you? How are you going to apply those learnings in your everyday life? Because ultimately you will be a leader if you aren't already. Elon Musk, everybody's heard of him, he's asked himself a simple question every day. How can I do things better today than I did them yesterday? That takes less than 2 seconds to ask yourself the question, but it's a mindset, and it goes back to the cadet in you, your character, your attitude, your drive, your energy, and your talent. Exploit, expand, and focus on that, because there's only one you, and you're totally unique. So what are the takeaways? So now what? You've heard it, and some of it resonated, for sure. So these 5 things are, in my mind, super important, and I'm going to just sort of tick them off for you. Listen. Listen. Listening is the most important thing to do in a working environment. It's actually the most important thing to do in life. You choose widely. The freedom of choice that we have, probably our greatest freedom. So we can choose to say yes or no. We can choose to go or stay. We can choose to stay in bed, or we can choose to get up with a great attitude. First things first, eat the frogs if you have to. You do have to. It's just when you're going to do it. Procrastination on eating frogs is not a good idea. Be a mentor. Have a mentor. Seek them. Seek many of them. And because you will learn, they will help you, they will inspire you, and then what happens is you become one, which is really the fun part. And it's been the fun part for me. And people, believe in them more than they believe in themselves, because we're all cadets. So, 400 and something years ago, William Shakespeare says the golden age is before us, not behind us. That statement is as true today as it was in 1564. So, my final thought is enjoy the ride. You can't get off the roller coaster. You're here. Enjoy the ride. Success is where opportunity and preparation cross paths. You've prepared for years. An opportunity shows up. You're prepared for that opportunity, and you might have to stretch for it. In fact, better if you do. It's better to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You stretch for that opportunity, and you will have success. And I want to end this way because every life is filled with peaks and valleys, ups and downs, good things, bad things. Jimmy Buffett said it in a super great way in his song, He Went to Paris. Some of it's magic and some of it's tragic, but I've had a good life all the way. Thank you very much.